What do you think it would be like to fly over 19 hours straight on the world's longest flight?
Well, today, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing by flying from one side of the world to the other in order to find out how this is possible, what the seats are like, how good the food can be, and most importantly, I want to know if I'll go insane or not being trapped in a plane for almost an entire day.
Now, not only am I going to be taking the world's longest flight today, but I'm also going to be flying the world's best airline, Singapore Air. But now that I'm here at the airport, I think it's time to head inside to check in and grab our boarding pass. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Good, how are you? What's the
Pretty good.
destination?
Just Singapore.
Alright, so it will be gate 53, 905 is boarding time, 39 alpha is your seat, you have the TSA pre-check, okay?
Cool. Have you done the world's longest flight before?
No, never. Good luck.
Thanks, I'm not prepared. Have a good one. As you guys can see, that check-in was super quick and super easy. I got my boarding pass. I'm gonna be in a window seat for this flight, and you may have noticed that there weren't many people there. So I think I should tell you about why that actually is. So normally when you take a longer flight, there's gonna be an economy class, a premium economy, a business class, and sometimes even a first class. But what makes this flight so unique and so special is there are only business class and premium economy on the entire plane. And the reason why there is no economy class is because if there are that many people and the extra baggage, the weight would be so heavy that the plane wouldn't be able to fly the entire 19 hours. And you're probably thinking to yourself, since there's only business class and premium economy, it must cost a ton of money. Well, if you were to fly on business class, you're right. It would be pretty expensive, coming in at around $7,000 US. And normally one way on premium economy is about $1,400 and a round trip is about $2,500 US. But somehow I was able to get my one-way ticket at an insane price of $600. So now that we have our boarding pass, I think it's time to head through security.
And lucky for me, since I was TSA pre-checked, I was able to get through security in no time at all without being strip searched.
Now, the only downside to flying out of Newark is it is probably the worst airport in all of the US. There is absolutely nothing once you get past security. I think there's like one or two shops, which is never fun. And on top of that, there are also no lounges. I mean, there are some for business class customers, but that's about it.
And if you think I'm exaggerating here, it was legitimately ranked the #1 worst airport in America. But at least the flight would soon be boarding, and then we could see what is going to be in store for us over these next 19 hours.
And I already know the aviation gurus are going to be saying, well, Eric, the longest flight is actually to JFK, not Newark. This is the flight duration to JFK, and this is the flight duration to Newark. As you can see from the receipts, this flight is 10 minutes longer, making it the longest flight in the entire world as of today. And to make things even more insane, the plane that I'm about to be flying on is the only one in the world capable of making this journey. There are only 9 of them, and they are all owned by Singapore Airlines. And speaking of the plane, it is finally time to board the world's longest flight. Hi there, how are you?
I'm sleepy to be honest, but happy to be here.
I am
as soon as
too.
we get out of here, we're heading home.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your flight.
So now, since this is the world's longest flight, this is exactly how we're going to be rating things. First off, we're going to see if I'm dead by the time I land, if I'm half alive, or exactly how I'm feeling. We're also going to be rating the seat, the amenities, the dining, and everything else on board. But it is finally time for the flight. Hi there. How are you?
Number?
39A.
39A, this way.
Thank you.
Making my way through the cabin, I passed by the unreal business class seat, which I would have loved to be in for these next 19 hours. But then one of the flight attendants was nice enough to bring me all the way back to my seat.
Let me know what's the seat number.
39A.
39A. Please follow my colleague.
Perfect.
Now, even though I wasn't in business class, there was nothing to complain about, since Singapore Airlines Premium Economy is ranked top 5 in the world, and soon enough, I had arrived at my seat. First things first, it was time for the comfort test, where I was happy to see that the butt cushion was super soft, the backrest was nicely padded, and the headrest was also super solid. Located beside my hip were 2 buttons, where the bottom one extended a leg rest from below the seat when I wanted to use the footrest, and the other was for the recline, which actually went back a really good amount. As for the legroom, there was a ton of space for me being only 5'8", but even if you were taller, there would still be a ton of room. And I almost forgot to mention that I was also given a super soft pillow and a warm blanket just in case I got cold during the flight.
So right off the bat, the seat is actually super solid. The seat is super comfortable. There is tons of leg room. There's also like a leg rest and a footrest, which is always nice. The TV on the back of the screen is huge, and there's also a ton of little things too, which is always nice to see. Now, one thing that I do want to say is every single other aviation person who has reviewed this flight has always done the business class. I am pretty sure I'm one of the first to actually do the premium economy, and the reason for that is because 99.9% of people, if they ever take this flight, it's gonna be the premium economy. Like I said earlier, the business class is insanely expensive unless you have the points for it, but I am super interested to see how I'm gonna be feeling after these next 19 hours.
And I just want you to imagine how you might feel being trapped in a metal tube for almost a day. But anyways, let's keep exploring. Since there wasn't a ton of people on the plane, there was a lot of room in the overhead for bags, along with a pretty solid amount underneath the seat too. Between me and my neighbor, there was a place for both of us to put our drinks, and if we had additional water bottles, there was also a slot for myself and her too. But then I was completely caught off guard because I ended up being given a warm welcome towel, which normally only happens when you fly in business class.
Now, since this is the special plane I was telling you guys about earlier, there actually aren't a ton of people on board, and boarding went by super fast. So that means soon we are going to be pushing back from the gate, but before that happens, I'm going to explore the seats some more, and once we're in the air, I'm going to show you the in-flight entertainment and everything else that happens over these next 19 hours.
Located on the back of every seat was a fully adjustable reading lamp that I found quite amusing. There's a port beside the TV for USB charging, a latch to hang jackets or hoodies, and also a place to plug in headphones or charge a secondary device. Another cool feature of this seat was the remote, which could be pulled out to control the TV, but it was also used to control the overhead lamp too, which was pretty neat. But anyways, it was now 9:29, and since we were fully boarded, we began pushing back from the gate a few minutes early. For the world's longest flight, I'm going to be flying 19 hours from New York City all the way to Singapore, and after getting to the runway, it was time for takeoff.
Now that we're in the air, I decided to open up the in-flight map, and it turns out that we are actually going to be flying over the Arctic. Now, the problem with flying over the Arctic is that depending on the time of year, it's either going to be completely daylight or completely nighttime. I'm going to put my money on the fact that it's probably going to be sunny the entire time. The issue with that is I have no idea when I'm supposed to sleep. You see, normally on a flight, you know exactly when you're going to sleep because it's a red-eye flight, you sleep during the night, and you're awake during the day. But on this flight, if it happens to be entirely during the day, I have no idea when the sleep is supposed to happen. But if I'm being completely honest, that sounds like a problem for later because we just got on the flight and there is still so much more that I need to explore. So I'm going to start doing that right now.
But first, it turns out that the flight attendants were coming around the cabin to give out some snacks and drinks, so I decided to get myself a glass of apple juice since it was still early in the morning. Also, I could enjoy it along with the peas and crackers. Checking out the pouch in front of me, inside I found a Singapore Airlines branded waist bag, a safety pamphlet which I won't be needing since this isn't a Boeing, a guide on how to connect to the Wi-Fi, a magazine for in-flight shopping, a pair of over-ear headphones for the in-flight entertainment which were super good quality, and finally the menu for today's flight. On request at any point in this flight, I would be able to get an amenities pouch, which came with things like an eye mask, earplugs, slippers, and a bunch more. But let's check out the food. Depending on which way you are taking this flight, there are two separate menus, but for the one that I was on from New York to Singapore, there was a lunch which came with a salad, the choice between roast chicken or pork, a citrus tart for dessert, and also buns plus chocolate. For snacks, there were sandwiches, fruit, chips, and all of the usual things to expect. For dinner, it was a salmon salad to start, the choice of fried noodles or lamb for the main, coffee cake or crackers for dessert, along with even more chocolate and bread. But finally, for the refreshment meal, there was also going to be a margarita pizza. Now, as for the drinks, there was champagne, red wine, white wine, cocktails, spirits, or even beer too.
On a normal flight, you will only ever get one, maybe two meals, but since this flight is so unique and so long, we actually get three: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And since we've now been flying for about 45 minutes, I'm pretty sure that the in-flight dining is supposed to be starting soon, starting off with the breakfast meal.
So before that happens, I think we should check out the in-flight entertainment because obviously I need to watch something while I eat. Checking out the movies, there was a massive selection with 399 movies in various languages from all around the world. On top of that, there was also live TV where you could watch things like soccer, regular shows, and series, which had so many that I couldn't even keep count. There was also music, and finally the in-flight map, which I had showed you a bit earlier, but it is always my favorite.
Now, one of the things that I didn't realize is that prior to the flight, you were actually able to do something called Book the Cook, which is to pre-order all of your menus. On top of the seat, pretty much everyone has this sticker indicating to the cabin crew exactly which meals they ordered for the entire flight. And with that in mind, because I didn't book my meals prior, hopefully they actually have the food that I want. Because there's a very real chance that they're going to run out of my first option, and potentially I'll have to take the only ones left. So if you guys ever take this flight, don't make the same mistake that I did.
But I guess now it was time to find out, since the crew had begun the first meal service. So I decided to take up my tray table, which was hidden inside of the armrest, and I was happy to see that it was a pretty solid size. And guess what? It turns out that they did have my first choice of pork, which was absolutely delicious. Now that I was all done the meal, I decided to kill some time by watching some movies, but at this point I needed to use the bathroom, so we may as well check that out. Even though it was a bit on the smaller side, inside everything was extremely clean, along with some nice wood finishings. Plus there was also a ton of headroom and a giant mirror for fit checks. Anyways, now that I was done, I made my way back to my seat only to find that the sun was now setting as we began to make our way over France.
So I'll be honest here, we are now about 6 hours into the flight, and I have been watching movies the entire time since the meal. So far the flight is actually going really good. The seat is super comfortable, the first meal service was awesome, but now we have a little bit of a problem. So originally the flight path was supposed to go over the Arctic, but now we're flying over Europe and the Middle East. And the problem with that is back home, my body thinks it's only about 2:30 in the afternoon, but right now it's pretty dark outside. Normally when I go to bed, it's around midnight, and by the time it's midnight back home, there's only going to be about 2 hours until I land in Singapore, so I'm debating on just staying awake the entire flight. I don't know if this is going to be a good idea or a bad idea, but now I was talking to the cabin crew and they said the next meal service should be in about 3 hours, so until then, I think it's time to watch even more movies.
And trust me, there is a very real chance that by staying up, I am making a terrible decision, but we'll just have to wait and see. To make me feel a little bit better, pretty much nobody was sleeping and everyone was keeping themselves entertained, including myself, until the entertainment system decided to break.
Okay, so something pretty weird just happened. So basically, I was in the middle of watching the movie and the audio just got completely scuffed. Originally, I thought it was the headphones, so I called over a flight attendant. They gave me a brand new pair and it's still completely bugged out. After that, I ended up asking them to do a full-on system reboot, so I had to restart everything, go to a loading screen. But luckily now the entertainment system is fully working, but the in-flight meal service is supposed to be starting soon because as you can tell, the lights are all on, so it's going to be interesting to see what that's like.
And because the earlier meal actually ended up being lunch, this was going to be considered our dinner, where I was again able to get my first choice being the lamb, and as you can see, this was an absolute feast.
So for meal service number 2, yet again, it was super good. This time I got some sort of lamb, which was really good. I passed on the veggies just because I'm not a big veggie guy, but besides that, it gets a solid 9 out of 10. Now, the craziest part about this flight is there is still 8 hours left, and I think I've made the decision that I'm not going to sleep, but I'm still not sure. Apparently, in just a few hours, it's supposed to be daytime again, so I might try and get a little bit of a nap. And then about 2 or 3 hours before landing, we're supposed to be having that final meal service, and I'll be giving you guys my final thoughts then.
Now at this point in the flight, I felt my phone addiction kicking in, so I decided it was time to connect to the Wi-Fi. For any sweet first class, business class, or loyalty member, there was a free complimentary Wi-Fi, but if you weren't any of these, then it would be $15.99 for the entire flight, which isn't bad at all considering it was fast enough to browse through social media. And I'll be honest, by now I was starting to feel pretty exhausted, and by the time that I was ready to rest my eyes, we were flying over the Middle East and the sun was already rising, so it looks like I won't be sleeping after all. And since it was now considered morning, the crew began serving orange juice, water, snacks, and also the refreshment meal, which was the margarita pizza that I was telling you guys about earlier.
So I'll be honest, after eating the last meal of pizza, I just watched movies for the rest of the flight. I think in total I watched like 7 different movies and I didn't sleep whatsoever. Now I do want to say the fact that I didn't sleep was self-inflicted. I made that choice. It wasn't because the seat was uncomfortable. In fact, the seat was actually really good. It was super comfy, there was tons of legroom, and my back wasn't sore whatsoever until the very end of the flight, but I don't think that's because of the seat. I think it's just because it it was 19 hours in the sky. Overall, that gets a solid 5 stars. In terms of how I'm feeling overall, surprisingly, I'm not dead. When you hear a 19-hour flight, you would expect to be pretty dead afterwards, and honestly, that's what I was thinking too, and it wasn't that bad. It was actually the fastest 19 hours I have ever experienced. So that gets another 5 stars. Now, as for the in-flight entertainment, that was also really good. There were tons of movies, shows, music, and pretty much anything you could possibly want. The only downside was the one part in the flight where I needed to have a system reset because the audio completely bugged out. So that gets a solid 4.5 stars. And then the final category would be the food and amenities. Overall, the only downside when it came to the food is there wasn't a ton of options. There were pretty much only 2 for every meal service. So I'm gonna have to give that one 4.5 stars too.
And I'll be honest, considering the fact that 19 hours ago I had no idea how this was gonna go, I would totally do it again. And overall, I would have to say that the world's longest flight and Singapore Airlines was truly an amazing experience. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and watch this video next.